Great pleasure to see so many people with whom I've shared the chalet experience this evening, and people who had the chalet experience before I did. And that one thing that unites us all has brought us all together tonight, and that's rather nice. So thank you for being here. You'll have noticed that we're being filmed. So we expect you all to be on your very best behaviour. No heckling, no throwing anything. And that means I have to make another thank you. Some of you here shared the chalet with Asa Nethercott. When Asa died, he left half his estate to the college for the support of the chalet. And we now use that money to reduce the costs for the people that go there, to offer bursaries to people who would otherwise be prevented, and also to cover the costs of one-off things like tonight's filming. So I have to say another thank you there to Asa. Now, this is a Univ event, and you will know that I've been working for some years on a history of the chalet parties. And when the book comes out, and you get a copy, I just thought I'd get that in. Get it over with. You'll see that one of the arguments I make is that there have been times in the chalet's history when we could so easily have lost the place. And it's tended to be rescued by things that were really accidental. And when we were thinking of how to entertain you tonight, we thought that because this is a Univ event, I would tell you about the ways in which Univ has come in at those accidental points. And it is arguable that the Univ contribution was unique to an extent that I hope you'll appreciate by the time I finish speaking. So to go to the beginning, we all know that the chalet parties were started by Francis Ziger. He entered Balliol in 1890, and he ran his first reading party at the end of his first academic year, in 1891, using the family summer home on the Prairie. This is one of the early parties. Just look at this. Hard collar, waistcoat, watch chain, spats. Standard of chalet dress has really fallen off. This man was a visitor. He became a diplomat, he became a barrister, he's the sixth son of an earl. He became a diplomat, he became a pioneer neurologist at the Reckitt Infirmary, he was a solicitor, I think you can tell. Ziger had an uncanny instinct for perceiving a future promise in young men who he was then, totally young men. Now, admittedly, the Balliol of his time, he was dealing with a rather selective constituency. But the correlation between public life and the people he selected to go to the chalet is uncanny, it really is. He had a skill at seeing the promise in young men. Now, he ran his own parties, of course, until 1931, when his chest had become so bad that he could no longer get up the mountain. For the next 3 years, he managed the parties as far as he could, at long distance. This is a famous, well-known picture of him in 1932, down in the village of Contamine in the valley, keeping in touch with what was going on at the chalet. But of course, he realised at that point that he had to turn his attention to the succession. Now remember that the chalet was a private possession. It was his family's possession. His father had built it. His father died. His mother died. In the manner of the Victorian time, everything passed to the elder son, David Urquhart Jr. There is a story that's been circulated in the chalet reviews for him. But he had to turn his attention to who would look after the chalet parties when he had gone, and it was still a private possession. And his lot, as it were, fell on a very junior colleague, Roger Miners, later Sir Roger. That may have been a factor in Sligger's choice. He had a taste for the aristocracy, no question of that. Roger Miners entered Balliol in 1922, and he became a fellow in 1927. And he was very similar to Sligger. Possibly slightly effete, celibate bachelor don, working in the classics, based in college. I mean, a clone, really, of Sligger, and much, much younger. So there was the future built in Sligger's plan. Now, of course, Roger Miners did not look like this in 1927. This is a 1925 party, and there he is, together with David Knowles, who was a Roman Catholic priest from Downside. Sligger liked to get Roman Catholic priests into the chalet very frequently. And here is Noel Blakiston of Cambridge. Now, some of you will have picked off the shelf at the chalet Noel Blakiston's book, A Romantic Friendship, which tells the story of the juvenile attachment that he had to Cyril Connolly, the author. It was one of those very Edwardian, very male friendships. They'd both been at Eton together. Noel went to Cambridge, and Cyril went to Oxford, came to Oxford, and the friendship continued, and the letters are extraordinary and possibly slightly embarrassing by modern standards, depending on your viewpoint. And Cyril introduced Noel to Sligger, and Sligger liked him, and characteristically developed his own friendship with Noel, which continued when they all separated. He was a great networker. That was something that he did. This is on Paul the Trico, to see it correctly. So Roger Miners carried on leading those parties until the last pre-war party in 1938. And then everything changed. Well, for one thing, it was, of course, the war. Many academics who did not go into the armed services during the war went into the civil service, and Roger Miners did that. He went into the Treasury with responsibility for foreign currency exchanges. Could be needed in the next few months, I guess. He also, at the same time, inherited, with his twin brother Humphrey, the family estate, Trago, Herefordshire, from a very distant cousin who held it for quite a time, and the estate had become very run down. It needed a lot of restoration and investment, which was serious load for an academic salary. Humphrey became Deputy Governor at the Bank of England, but even so, there was a big drain on their resources. That was significant. The other thing is, and this was probably the big mistake, Roger Miners was recommended to apply for the chair of Latin in Cambridge, which he got, and he hated it. They're moving from a very active tutorial fellowship to a professorship with a few graduate students to supervise and a few lectures to give. This didn't suit him at all. And he turned instead to translations and editions of the classics, and actually made a great future. I mean, he was a very distinguished academic in that sense, but it was all outside his university job because of that. And that wasn't the worst of it, because a year later, probably that's not the way I should have said it. A year later, he got married. And he married the daughter of the Dean of Durham Cathedral, Lavinia, who conducted the service. Now the point is, sorry, I shouldn't have expressed it like that. The point is, he was no longer the bachelor don living in college to whom Sligger had left the chalet. The plan had failed. He continued in Cambridge, and then it got worse. The Balliol mastership came up for election in 1949. It is said that Roger Miners had been advised to go to Cambridge because it would improve his chances of getting the mastership at Balliol. Sadly, he was defeated by one vote in the election, and as colleges do, in those circumstances, the college turned to a compromise candidate who also defeated Miners by one vote. And he was a sensitive man, so there he was, stuck in Cambridge, and he became almost, well, really paranoid about anything to do with Balliol. He was still cataloguing the medieval manuscripts that Balliol held at this stage, and it is said by people at the time, he could get into college and work and out again without anybody knowing he'd been there. He finally came back to Oxford in 1953 when he took the chair of Latin, which was held at Corpus. And ironically, we rented him and his wife Lavinia number 14 Merton Street, just down the road, for what Lavinia described as a very high rent, and they held that for 15 years. Well, it's an ill wind blows nobody good, my feeling. He never saw the chalet again, except for one day in 1950, when he took Lavinia to see it. We know it was one day. We got his railway tickets in the archive, and that was it. But I mean, how on earth could he put parties together? He cut himself off from Balliol. Yeah. So Sligger's plan had failed. Now, Sligger, in fact, was intelligent enough to work out that he couldn't rely totally on Roger Minors, and he had expressed in writing a plan that there would be a second echelon of party leaders who would help split the party. Cyril Bailey and Humphrey Sumner were largely of Sligger's vintage, they're an older generation there. Cyril Bailey, of course, was Sligger's biographer, and he'd been a faithful Chalet supporter for 20 years, but had largely lost interest. Humphrey Sumner had gone to All Souls, where he became warden, where, interestingly, he was succeeded by another of Sligger's Chaletites, John Sparrow, which caused Maurice Bowrer of Wadham to comment, "One Sparrow does not Sumner make." Of the younger generation, I wish there was time to do some more Bowrer quotes. Some here may remember Lord Redcliffe Maud of famed smoothness. Bowrer's comment was, I met Redcliffe Maud in the High this morning, he kept his shoulder to me. Of the younger generation, Tom Bowles was a favourite of Sligger's. He ultimately became head of House of Magdalen. Bobby Longdon at Christchurch. Bobby Longdon was another of Cyril Connolly's inamorati. In fact, the passion for Bobby Longdon was at its height at the same time as Noel Blakiston, and Cyril was quite capable of writing to one to ask what they thought he should do about his feelings for the other. What they both thought could be said in it. That was a strange time. Sadly, Bobby Longdon, he went to Wellington College as headmaster and was killed when the college was bombed during the war. Richard Hayes was a great favourite of Sligger's. He had gone to Edinburgh as chair of history, and had gone to Brasenose. So the younger generation was scattered as well. The plan literally fell apart. Now, Christopher Cox is the interesting one. Christopher Cox had been a student of Sligger's at Balliol and moved to New College. He'd only been to the chalet for one day when Sligger was there, in 1928. But with that perception of promise in the future, Sligger latched on to Christopher Cox as one of the keys to the future, and he began to bombard him with letters of encouragement about the chalet. I mean, I suspect today we might call it grooming. And Christopher Cox was receptive ground for that. He liked to soak himself in the classics. He'd been born in 1899, so for the whole of his life he referred to himself as a Victorian. So he had that backward-looking thing, and he soaked up Sligger's tradition as expressed in Sligger's letters. No question, saw himself as the guardian of Sligger's tradition. So from 1932, when Sligger stopped, Christopher Cox began to lead parties at the Chalet in partnership with some of those others. And this is a characteristic pose. Now, Christopher Cox was in a strange position because he'd been a fellow of New College. He'd been, as it were, seduced into colonial education, from which he never came back. And through the war and after the war, he remained a Whitehall employee in the Colonial Office, concerned with increasing education across the colony. This was regarded as so distinguished, for which he got his knighthood, that New College actually gave him rooms to use at the weekend, even though he wasn't selling. But he was no longer in college after the war. But he ran parties up to the war, and in 1934, he put together this party, which included this man. Now we know him. That is Christopher's younger brother David. David Cox, fellow here. Now here was a possible approach to the future, yes? Christopher Cox at New College, totally, or his party in New College, totally soaked in tradition. David Cox, keen mountaineer, a strong mountain man at Univ. This was the way that Univ could get into the, could have worked very well. Could have been perfect. Cross-Oxford partnership with two brothers, yeah? But for one thing, David Cox loathed the Chalet. After that 1934 party, he described the atmosphere there to a friend as absolutely stifling. The reading party atmosphere that Christopher loved was just not for him. And he only went again in 1938, and he only used the Chalet as a basis for flying. He wasn't interested in the Chalet. So that's not the way Univ got in. Now just look at what's happened here. The pre-war plan has fallen apart completely. Roger Miners is disenfranchised and disengaged, and there's been a war, and the Chalet has been empty throughout all that. Well, no, actually not empty. It wasn't empty during the war, but that's another whole story for another time. There were no Oxford members there for 14 years. It was rescued, and this is one of the accidents of history, and this is so tenuous when you stand back and look at it. It's quite miraculous that it actually happened. I told you Roger Miners married. He married Lavinia, who was the daughter of the Dean of Durham, who was Cyril Allington. Her elder brother was Giles Allington, much loved fellow here. I'm going to talk about this 10 years later. Giles Allington had accompanied Roger and Lavinia on the 1950 day visit to the Chalet. So he knew all about the Chalet. So he asked his brother-in-law if he could take parties out to the Chalet. And Univ, therefore, in 1952, opened the Chalet for the first time since 1938. Of the party he put together, Chris Elrington was one of Giles' history students and had just graduated and just married. So his wife Jean came along as cook. Roger Smith, who lived a lot of years before that, said her cooking was the jewel in the crown, as far as he was concerned. They had a visit from Peter Strawson, here, and his wife. That must have raised the tone of the conversation a lot. Stephen Damon is interesting. Stephen Damon was Anglo-French, and his education had been interrupted in France by the war. And Stephen's mother wrote to Giles to say that she believed that her son was a man of promise, and if someone was prepared to invest in him, it would be repaid. And Giles trusted her and took her at her word and gave Stephen a place at Univ. My goodness, you wouldn't get that through admissions today, I know. And he was right. Stephen Damon had a distinguished career as a teacher. He ended up at Anglais, and he kept a photograph of Giles Allington on his desk throughout his entire life as a grad student. They became very close, and I don't think I'm saying anything more than close tutor-student relationship there. For the next 3 years, they travelled out to the Chalet together, except his birth. John Fox. John Fox is even more interesting. I'm still in touch with Jean. I'm still in touch with John. John Fox decided to reach the Chalet by hitchhiking from Grenoble. And he was so efficient at it that he arrived 24 hours before the party. He made contact with the Chalet's caretaker, Louis Brossard, in the village, and Louis took him up to the Chalet and stayed with him for the night. And you would want that, let me tell you, if you haven't had the experience, you would never want to stay a night in the Chalet on your own. So he got there a day before everybody else. John Fox was the first Oxford undergraduate to set foot in the Chalet in 14 years. He has a place in the Chalet story, which is totally unique. Now, of course, they were all new to it. Just look at their diary entries, and this is the totality of it. Walks, chiefly exploratory, and no one knew their way around. But they did get across the valley to Lafayette, And they did go across the continent to Montjoly, which is not bad. And this is one of Jean Elrington's menus. Just look at this. Melon, yeah, hors d'oeuvre, cream tomato soup, grilled steak, salad, fruit salad with kirsch. Look at the alcohol. Cake, dessert wine, coffee, cigars. Is it any wonder Roger Smith said this was a jewel in the crown? Remember, the UK was still subject to food rationing. This was matter of heaven. They didn't take any photographs in 1952, but they did the following year. Here they are. That's Chris Elrington, there's Jean, Giles. Many people have expressed mystification at the appearance of Giles at the Chalet. For some reason, he never had his hair cut before he went to the Chalet. That's Stephen Dowden, there's Roger Smith, and his David H. Now the dress has changed, of course, but it could be a Chalet group photo from today, couldn't it? Absolutely. One or two things were different in 1953. We don't have cows grazing on the lawn. I mean, there have been one or two instances in recent years when livestock has contaminated the Chalet's water supply, but this is not a problem we have to cope with. But on the other hand, this is a familiar scene, isn't it? You know, it hasn't changed. It just has not changed. You will see groupings like that on the lawn at the Chalet any year you like. And they got a bit more adventurous in 1953. This is Ted Roos, Giles, here they are. This is Chris, Jean, Stefan, Roger, and Giles. Look at the hair going all over the place. And the characteristic pipe, of course, everywhere. Now, Christopher Cox had been watching this. You know, these terrible Univ Paris people taking over the Chalet. So he decided to act, and interestingly, he did what Sliger had done. He turned to one of his own students, Frank Lever, who had moved to Corpus, and started to groom Frank with letters of encouragement. I mean, saying things like, "You are the Chalet guardian angel." He said this. And so in 1954, Frank Lever taught a party largely consisting of Corpus members. Here is Frank, there's his wife. Christopher Cox got himself invited as advisor, of course, because these people didn't know the Chalet and they needed someone who knew the traditions, etc. Now, because there were two colleges involved, Jean Elrington started a form of communication between the two parties. This was a handwritten set of notes in an AA hardbound notebook. That's Automobile Association, not alcohol. Yeah. And it's glorious. It really is the post-war equivalent of the perfect Chaletite, but from a completely different view. Just look at this. Most people don't. However, I, Jean, have had a bath in the kitchen, in a hip bath, which Jeremy Lee filled from the tank on the stove. Be careful not to fill the bath too full, because if you get it, it'll overflow full. Forgive me, but haven't somebody else pointed that? Cows. Cows will get in if they can and cause a mess on the carpets, etc. My goodness me, yes, they would, wouldn't they? Don't trust their guards. The Boffin boys from the Tuat farm. Now, the Tuat farm is La Charme, which is in the hands of a family called Tuat at the time. Where are we? Yes. They will try to sell you starved chickens and rabbits. Don't buy them. And the worst Boffin boy is called Louis. That's not Louis Russell. His sister is his accomplice. They will fix you if they can. And Jean's notebook, advising the other party, is full of gloriously practical things. Potatoes are heavy to carry from the village. They have to be peeled and there's waste. Rice and spaghetti are light and there's no waste. And she's full of things like, to advise to party leaders, put some food out in the kitchen during the day, because otherwise you will come to cook dinner and find that what you deserve for dinner has been eaten. She was used to the undergraduate appetite. Jean's notebook is glorious. So, with Frank Lever on one side and Giles Arlington on the other, everything was set up. It wasn't to be, sadly. As many of you know, John Darlington died in early 1956. I believe chronic renal disease that turned into a highly aggressive tumour, which killed him rather quickly. There was no chalet party in 1956. Instead, this is a reminder that the chalet was a private possession. Instead, Roger Miners loaned it to a colleague in the university, Hugh Keane, who was secretary to the university chest. And Hugh Keane took a family for a holiday to the chalet. Now, I wish there was time for me to tell you all about the 1956 party, because the story frankly would scream. But just two anecdotes. Christopher Cox, of course, got himself invited because they needed knowledge about the chalet. And Christopher was also keen to build up relationships on the mountain with the Bouchers, who by then were renting the chalet next door, with the Haute Savoie at the hotel. Now, Christopher arrived 24 hours after Hugh Keane had moved in with his family, and keen to keep the relationship with the Haute Savoie going, stopped to have dinner with Max and Simone. And the Pernod, and then the wine flowed, and then the brandy. And by the time he came to leave, I suspect rather unsteadily, it was dark, and there was a mist rising from the valley. Now, anybody else would have gone down the track, but Christopher Cox, tried to find his way through the old path down the bushes. Predictably, he got lost, he fell in a stream, lost one of his bags and his spectacles, and then his torch battery went flat. So he was wandering around in the mountain on the dark, lost on the mountainside. When eventually he did get to the chalet, Catherine Keane, Hugh's wife, took him aside and expressed the concern that they had a party of young women, their daughters and friends, and the chalet seemed to be poorly stocked with chamber pots for night use. Well, Christopher had to explain as gently as he could that this had not been a problem for male undergraduates, for whom the windows and the balcony provided not only facility, but also an opportunity for a little male competitiveness, which he referred to as high coppolorum. Now, if you think about it, that adds a whole new layer of meaning to what that expression is usually used for. The other thing about 1956 is that they had a visit from a member of the Special Operations Executive, i.e. a spy. 56 is fascinating, but it's nothing to do with the history of Univ. The Univ succession was secured by Giles, as he said, calling Tony Firth to his deathbed and telling him that he would leave the chalet. Now, there are people here who can speak with greater authority than I can on the fact that Tony Firth was a great chalet party leader. He picked up the chalet loyally and ran with it for the next 20 years, and it became the high spot of his year. And there you did. Yes. John, can you believe it? I've been studying this photograph. Surely those old sandals, aren't they?
Well, Jim should be there.
That would be, they were hard chaletites in those days. Tony Firth secured the Univ succession. Now, things weren't going quite so well for Christopher Cox. This is one of the late 50s parties. There's Frank Lepper again, but just look at this party. That is Charles Stanley Baker, a friend. That's Charles' wife. That's Charles' daughter. That's Charles' son. Here is Frank's son, Patrick Lepper, who became a well-known academic. That's the Lepper's daughter. But this is the problem. Now, I've been in touch with the Stanley Baker's daughter, Penny, and she confirms they prided themselves on being the non-reading party. Frank was interested in taking parties of friends for summer holidays. All right, a little sprinkling of students, for form's sake, but not many. No? This didn't fit Christopher Cox's aim, any at all. And Christopher put up with it until 1960, and then he wrote to Roger Miners, and it's an extraordinary letter, because it's totally unlike his usual discursive style. It's terse and targeted, and he touches very gently the academic points that he knew Roger Miners would respond to, asking if perhaps he might run a chalet party. Now remember that Christopher Cox had no fellowship in college. He was a weekend visitor to New College. And there was a way he got around that, but that's another story. So Roger Miners said yes. And the reticent nature of that letter is extraordinary when you know what happened afterwards. Because once Christopher got his feet under the table, that was it. So for the next decade, these two men dominated the chalet parties. Christopher, this is Solange Boucher, the mother of Hugh, who rented the chalet. It was Hugh who actually finally bought the chalet next door. Christopher's parties are to be perhaps a little inward looking, soaked in tradition, soaked in the classics. They gave classical titles to all the people who did the job, this sort of thing. One of Christopher's chaletites has wrote to me that there was something perhaps slightly old-fashioned high camp about the way Christopher approached the chalet party, but he was greatly loved and they were a great success. Tony, by contrast, Tony was a get your boots on and get out on the hillside with the boys man, wasn't he? This is Michael Hand, who did that very nice pen and ink sketch of the chalet. Mark, happy days?
The Montjoly.
Well, that's Montjoly. Ah, I played that Cold Pico. It's only goes to show how well I know plays. These two were very different.
There's Nick Owen on my left, as it were, Tony, and then Miles Tuley.
That's Miles Tuley, and that is Nick Owen. Correct? Happy days, surely. They were different, completely different in their approach. And you can see it in the diary entries. Christopher's diary entries are full and detailed and discursive, and they ramble all over the place. And he used classical allusions, and given that his writing is very difficult, sometimes you read one of Christopher's phrases and you can't work out even what the words are. But 2 days later, doing a washing up or something, suddenly, that's what he meant. Yeah? Tony, by comparison, wrote diary entries that were famously terse and laconic. He took the party to the Guida Midi, the great cable car ascent. One of the very few times the party actually went to the Guida Midi as a party. Now, some of you have been there. That glorious expanse of the Vallée Blanche and the stars of the Mer de Glace, looking across the Goldolmer Point and to the east, with the Matterhorn. It's one of the world's best sights. Tony's diary entry, my Gallipoli, good weather, superfluous. Christopher would never have allowed something like that to go without at least 2.5 pages. And they were very suspicious of each other. Tony wrote that to deal with Christopher on chalet business required an art of a particular kind. Christopher was afraid that, as a younger man, Tony would do something precipitous with the tradition, like sacking Louis Brossard for being drunk and unreliable, which he was. In fact, they were unfair to each other. They were both committed to the chalet in different ways. And ultimately, they did achieve a mutual respect, possibly distance respect. But they were different, and one of the differences was that Tony ran, when he had a car, trips to Annecy for alcoholic lunches. Now, I've been told about these. I mean, they were very alcoholic, and Tony's driving, which was apparently a rapid eclipse, was frightening on the way back. And when they got to the village, of course, they had to walk up in those days. That required another drink, because you didn't want to do the walking, which made the walk up pretty hard. Who have we got? Rick Porter, there's Tony. Colin Lowry was a Univ member who was in the civil service, who was brought in as cook for Charlie's kitchen. Mark Savage. I'm busy Mark isn't with us tonight, I'll explain why. Thomas Cullen. These lunches at Annecy became famous, but they didn't fit Christopher Cox's model, Charlie Martin at all. Now, at the end of the decade, they had a problem. They were still using the chalet with Roger Miner's permission. And Christopher Cox was prepared to admit that Tony had the greater skill in managing Roger Miner's feelings. And they played on sympathy over the Balliol position. But you know, there are only a certain number of times you can go to that well. And they knew that that was going to run out. The chalet sadly greatly needed some maintenance done. The rear roof had collapsed, and Roger Miners had been forced to sell Sligger's other chalet, the honeymoon chalet at Montpellier, in order to pay for it. The front roof was collapsing. They needed to raise money. But how do you raise money for somebody else's property? Now, in fact, Tony had started a small appeal in 1967, but ostensibly only for the use of Univ party. They wanted to get Balliol back, but how on earth could they get Balliol back without treading on Roger Miners' feelings? And they had French law to contend with. Now, I'm going to be dogmatic at this point. Tony Firth was a great chalet party leader, no doubt. But if he had done no more than this one thing, which I'm about to describe, we would still owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. Because in 1966, he recruited Jeremy Lever to be chalet party leader. The problem they faced in 1970 was that to take control of the chalet, they really needed an organisation that would own it. In those days, a British corporation could not own property in France. You never know, it may come back. French law did not recognise charitable trusts. French inheritance law is something else, which is why the French have partage. Because French inheritance tax can, depending on the circumstances, be up to 60% of the capital value. Can you imagine what that would do to the chalet when the directors changed? Yeah? Which is why the French have partage, the sharing. When someone dies, the property is shared across the family, and they don't have the tax situation in place. Well, Christopher Cox wrote to Frank Lever in great excitement to say, Tony has found us a clever lawyer, and a clever lawyer was exactly what he needed. Because any lawyer worth his salt will tell you that what appears to be impossible is merely a challenge. And what Jeremy put together was brilliant in the way it walked down the cracks between the laws. Yeah? So brilliant, it has survived today, and in fact, last year was renewed for the next 50 years. The ownership of the chalet is now renewed until 2071. Brilliant. And Jeremy went on to lead parties for the next 25 years. Now, when the trust started, they had nothing. Jeremy put up the £5,000 which they needed to buy the chalet from Roger Miners. Not a small amount of money, certainly not in 1970. The others put their hands in their pockets and paid the legal fees and the insurance and all those other things. And they did so in the hope that they would be reimbursed by appeal, which by and large they were. If they hadn't been prepared to do that, it would not have survived. That faith in the future and that commitment was tremendous. Last year, Jack ran parties of old members of the chalet. My goodness me, there are quite a few members of this group who I see in the audience. That was first party, first old members party. This was second old members party. Mark Savage, still coming to the chalet 50 years after that lunch in Annecy. Yeah. We could not do that if that first generation of trustees had not had the faith in the future and the commitment to the chalet to make it work. We owe them a heck of a lot. And certainly, we're rescuing the chalet from its danger points of being lost is concerned. This college can very definitely hold its head up and thrive. Thank you for listening.